Earlier tonight, we talked to former Penguin center iceman Mike Bullard, and we'll be back to chat with the Bullet in just a moment right here on the Penguins Hockey Network. Civic Arena in Pittsburgh, where the Penguins are hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs, and with us right now, a familiar face to Penguin fans over the years in the National Hockey League. Of course, played for a few campaigns with the Penguins, center iceman Mike Bullard. And Michael, I go back in your career, and it's hard to believe. I look at the stats tonight prior to the game, and you're only 4 shy of playing 700 games in the National Hockey League. That's unbelievable. And I think back to that first year when you played briefly with the Penguins, got sent back to Brantford, and did you ever, in your wildest imagination, think that you'd have that many games logged under your belt?
Well, I think it's a milestone in itself. Anytime you hit the 100 game mark in any time in the NHL, it's great. I know 704 and 4 more games is it's quite an honor to me, and I'm looking forward to it.
I remember that first year when you came up, and you were a little disappointed that you went back to Brantford, weren't you?
Well, I think it was harder than I thought it was. You come out young and cocky, and it wasn't meant to be. And I went back and learned and matured, and came up and had some great times here.
Yeah, you sure did. And let's go on to the rest of that year and what really happened. Probably one of the more exciting playoff series prior to this past year, and the Penguins winning the Stanley Cup when you played the St. Louis Blues, and you really were the guy of the hour for the Penguins. It forced them to 5 games.
Well, I tell you, I sat out the first game, and I know that after that, the older guys like George Ferguson and Greg Shepard and Randy Carl and that, they just kind of took me under their wing, and they made me feel at home. And I had nothing to lose. I was 19 years old, and hey, just go out and play your game. And I had probably the playoff of my life, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun during those years. And then, of course, in '83, '84, in the bad seasons with the club as far as wins are concerned, but you had probably your most exhilarating moment, I guess, as a pro, when you had over 50 goals. You had 51.
Yeah, I remember this day. Probably just going to remember it all my life. Pittsburgh gave me the tape of the game. It happened when in L.A. I scored my 50th goal, and I was jumping all over the place, and people in A are going, what's a guy in a last place team doing that for? And it was pretty exciting for me, and I had 6.5 great years here, and it was a wonderful time.
Michael, now with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and last year you played in Switzerland. I guess that the Cliff Fletcher connection has something to do with you returning to Toronto?
Well, I tell you, I had some pretty good years in Calgary, and Cliff was pretty good to me, and I was involved in a trade that I never thought I was going to be traded. I had 100 points the year before, but when you're getting a guy like Mark Hunter and Dougie Gilmour, I mean, it's a trade that you have to be made. And I left the Calgary organization with a lot of friends, but I never badmouthed them. I respected them. The owners were great to me, and it came back to help me in the future. Cliff asked me to come back and play in Toronto in the summer, and I was glad to.
Mike, you played in most of the divisions in this in the National Hockey League, but I want you to really think about the Patrick division right now. What you think of it as far as the teams are concerned, and what you've seen as far as changes in the division over the years.
Well, I'll tell you, the black and blue division, what it used to be called, it's an enjoyable division. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it when I was in Philly, and I enjoyed it when I was in Pittsburgh. Not as much because we didn't win as much back then, but it's a great division. There's a lot of good teams. I mean, you look at the standings now. You got Washington, Pittsburgh, Rangers, New Jersey. Everybody's right in the top 7 in the league. Every team's gone out and got a lot of talent, and they have some impact players on all the teams in this division. And it's a pretty tough division.
What about the Toronto Maple Leafs? In a real building process right now with Cliff coming in to handle the ship. Your thoughts on your team?
Well, it's been a rough year for us. We have a lot of new faces. It's just that every time we seem to be getting going, we've got hit with the injury bug. We lose a guy like Wendell Clark for most of the year so far, who started out like unbelievable, leading the National Hockey League. I mean, he was just playing unbelievable, his best hockey he's ever played. And, Fierzy got hurt for a bit there, and then all of a sudden, the other night there, Mike Foligno, who's been one of our better players, breaks his leg, and it's a career-ending, maybe threatening injury. And hopefully not. With his heart and determination, he'll be back playing with us. But, it's been that kind of year for us. There's been ups and downs, but I think there's been more downs because little things have been really getting to us.
Mike, we always give you the opportunity to say hello to folks in Pittsburgh, and you have a lot of friends here still, and I'll give you that chance right now before we close out.
Well, I'd like to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to Jim and Lisa Hoover and George and Candy Ferguson.
All right, and I'm sure they're watching and enjoying it, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, the Bullet, Mike Bullard, has been with us, and we'll be back with more hockey from the arena in just a moment on the Penguins Hockey Network.